The hospital hallway was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy, like the walls are holding their breath. Inside room 212, a young woman named Alina lay resting, her hand resting gently on her pregnant belly. The machines beside her hummed softly, a rhythm of hope and life. She'd just come out of a complicated scan, but the doctors said the baby was strong. For the first time in days, she allowed herself to smile. Then, the door opened. A woman in heels and dark lipstick stepped inside, her perfume cutting through the sterile air. "Oh," she said, her voice smooth but sharp. "So it's true. You're really here." Alina blinked, confused. "Do I know you?" The woman smirked. "You should. I've been sleeping with your husband." The words hit like glass shattering in the quiet room. Alina's heart skipped, her voice trembling. "What did you just say?" The woman, tall, confident, with eyes full of venom, walked closer to the bed. "You heard me. He told me you were gone, that the baby didn't make it. But I guess liars attract liars, huh?" Alina's throat closed up. She tried to sit up, clutching her stomach. "You need to leave. Now." But the woman didn't move. She looked around the room, then laughed bitterly. "You really think he loves you? You're just the wife on paper. I'm the one he spends nights with." Something in Alina's chest cracked, not from anger, but from heartbreak, so deep it felt physical. "Please," she said weakly. "This isn't the place." The woman's tone turned cruel. "Oh, don't worry, sweetie. I'm not here for him. I'm here to make sure you finally understand what you've lost." And before anyone could stop her, she reached out and shoved the tray table against Alina's side. The noise of metal and glass crashing to the floor echoed down the hallway. Alina gasped in pain, her hand flying to her belly. The commotion drew nurses running, shouting her name. But just as one reached the door, the mistress hissed, "Maybe next time you'll fight harder to keep your man." She turned to leave, heels clicking, but she didn't notice the man who had just walked in. He wasn't wearing a white coat. He wasn't a doctor. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed head to toe in black leather. Tattoos curled up his arms beneath his jacket, the emblem of a reaper's skull with wings stitched across the back. The entire corridor went still as his voice cut through the noise like a blade. "Did you just touch my wife?" The mistress froze mid-step, her blood draining from her face. What?" she stammered, turning slowly. The man's eyes were fire and ice all at once. He took one slow step forward. "You heard me," he said, his tone deadly calm. "You laid a hand on my wife." And just like that, the woman who thought she was powerful realized she had no idea who her husband really was. The mistress blinked, still trying to process the sight of him. Tall, broad, tattoos curling up his neck, the unmistakable emblem of the Hell's Angels stitched across his jacket. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. "Why, you're her husband?" she stammered, stepping back. He took another step forward, the air around him heavy with the kind of silence that crushes arrogance. "Yeah," he said, his voice calm but dangerous. "Name's Ryder. You hurt my wife. That's the last mistake you'll ever make." The mistress tried to find her voice. "I didn't mean to. She provoked me," she blurted out, desperation creeping into her tone. Ryder's eyes went cold. "She's carrying my child. You put your hands on her. There's no excuse big enough to walk out of this clean." A nurse at the door whispered, "Sir, please not here." Ryder didn't look away from the woman. "Relax," he said softly. "I'm not going to touch her. I don't have to." He pointed toward the window. Outside, lined up in the hospital parking lot, were nearly 20 motorcycles. Their engines rumbled quietly, as if waiting for a command. Men in black vests stood beside them, silent, still, watching. The Hell's Angels. The mistress's knees nearly buckled. You're with them?" Ryder nodded. "They're family. The kind that doesn't need blood to protect what matters." The nurse gasped as two bikers entered the hallway, their boots echoing off the linoleum. One handed Ryder something. Alina's necklace, the one she'd lost when she fell against the tray. He placed it gently in her hand and kissed her forehead. "It's over, sweetheart," he murmured. "You're safe now." Then he turned back to the mistress, who was trembling so hard she could barely speak. "You've got two choices," he said evenly. "Walk out of here and never come near my wife again. Or stay and see how the angels handle people who hurt women." She didn't wait to hear the rest. Her heels slipped against the floor as she stumbled toward the door, nearly colliding with security on her way out. The bikers stepped aside, letting her go, their expressions unreadable. Ryder watched until she disappeared down the hall, then exhaled slowly, his shoulders finally loosening. He turned back to Alina, who was crying softly now, not from pain, but from relief. "I thought you'd left," she whispered. He took her hand in both of his. "Never," he said. "You're my home." Outside, thunder rolled across the sky, the sound of motorcycles revving as the angels waited. Ryder looked toward the window, then down at her belly. "He'll never grow up in fear," he said quietly. "Not while I'm breathing." The hospital lights dimmed to a warm glow as night settled in. Alina lay resting, her breathing steady again, but Ryder stayed awake in the chair beside her bed. His hands were clasped, tattoos shifting under the faint light, his eyes locked on the small heartbeat monitor that pulsed steadily beside her. Every soft beep was a reminder. How close he'd come to losing everything. A nurse entered quietly, setting a glass of water on the table. "She's lucky," she said softly. "Whatever you said, that woman ran out of here like she'd seen a ghost." Ryder didn't look up. "She saw worse," he said, his tone calm but edged. "She saw the truth." The nurse hesitated, unsure what he meant, but then nodded and left the room. When the door shut, Alina stirred slightly, her voice weak but certain. "You shouldn't have scared her like that," she whispered. "You're going to get yourself in trouble." Ryder leaned forward, taking her hand gently. "You think I care about trouble? You're carrying our child. That's all that matters." A tear slid down her cheek. "I didn't even know she existed," she said. "I thought you were done with that life." He paused for a long moment before answering. "I was. But some people think they can destroy peace just because they've never had it." He looked at her belly, his voice softening. "That woman thought she could take away the only good thing I've ever had. She was wrong." Alina's lips trembled. "I didn't want you to go back to them," she said quietly. "I was scared." Ryder smiled faintly. "You still don't get it. The angels aren't trouble anymore. Not for me. They're family. And family protects its own." He stood and walked to the window. Down below, the row of motorcycles still waited, chrome gleaming under the parking lot lights, men talking quietly among themselves, always watching. "I told them to leave once she was safe," Ryder murmured. "But they stayed. They always do." Alina looked at him for a long time. Her husband, the man she once feared, had a heart hardened by the road. Now, he stood there like a storm finally at rest. "Ryder," she whispered, "you don't have to fight anymore." He turned back, his expression soft but haunted. "Some fights find you, even when you've put the gloves away." There was a knock at the door. One of the bikers stepped in, his voice deep and quiet. "Boss," he said, "she's gone. We followed her to the highway. She won't be back." Ryder nodded slowly. "Good." He looked back at his wife, eyes glinting under the low light. "Go tell the boys to head home. Tell them the baby's safe." The man smiled. "They'll like that." He turned to leave, but paused. "You did the right thing, brother." When the door closed again, Ryder sat back beside Alina, brushing her hair gently away from her face. "Rest now," he said softly. "You're safe. She's gone." Alina looked at him through half-closed eyes. "Promise me this," she whispered. "When the baby comes, no more fighting." He hesitated, then smiled faintly. "No more fighting," he said. But deep in his chest, he knew some promises were meant to be broken, especially when it came to protecting what you love. Outside, thunder rolled across the dark sky again, but inside room 212, everything was still. The next morning came with sunlight peeking through the hospital blinds, painting golden lines across the white sheets. Alina stirred awake, her fingers brushing over the wedding band still warm from Ryder's hand. He sat beside her, dozing lightly, his arm draped across the edge of her bed, the same arm that had once held a handlebar, now wrapped around the fragile piece he'd almost lost. A nurse stepped in quietly. "She's strong," she said with a gentle smile, glancing at Alina's belly. "So are you too. Whatever that was last night, it's over." Ryder opened his eyes slowly, his voice gravelly but calm. "Yeah," he said, "it's over." But in his mind, he could still hear the echo of the woman's heels, her cruel words, the way fear had painted Alina's face. He reached for her hand again, grounding himself in her warmth. Alina smiled faintly. "You didn't have to call them," she whispered. "The angels." Ryder looked down, his thumb tracing circles on her hand. "They called themselves," he said softly. "They heard what happened on the radio and showed up. Guess word travels fast when you've got brothers on the road." She chuckled weakly. They scared the whole hospital. He smirked. Good. Maybe next time, people will think twice before hurting someone who's already broken. The nurse placed a clipboard on the table. You can go home later today, she said kindly. Just rest. No stress. When the door closed, Ryder leaned closer, brushing a stray strand of hair from Alina's face. You know, he murmured, I used to think the road was my only life. Noise, steel, and freedom. But when I almost lost you, his voice faltered. That's when I realized peace isn't found out there. It's right here. Tears welled in her eyes. You mean that? He smiled faintly. I do. I'd burn every mile behind me if it meant keeping you safe. Later that day, as they left the hospital, the parking lot was almost empty, except for the row of motorcycles gleaming under the morning sun. One by one, the bikers straightened up, giving small nods of respect as Ryder passed by with Alina in his arms. No words were exchanged. None were needed. He placed her gently in the car and turned back to his brothers. Go home, he said simply. It's done. Their leader grinned. Family always rolls when family's in danger. Ryder nodded, and I'll never forget it. As the engines roared to life and faded into the distance, Alina rested her head against the window, watching the horizon. You know, she said softly, our child will grow up hearing stories about angels. Ryder smiled, starting the car. Good, he said. But make sure they know, sometimes, angels don't have wings. Sometimes they ride. If this story reached your heart, share it. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to remember that love doesn't always wear white or shine in halos. Sometimes it wears leather, carries scars, and fights like hell for what's right.